In the tale of Beauty and the Beast, it seems somehow right, familiar, and fitting that the beast, for all his ugliness, sternness, and capacity to inspire fear, should at the end turn into the handsome prince and marry the heroine. This feeling of rightness is characteristic of the response that fairy tales evoke, because the stuff from which myth and fairy tale are composed is a symbolic portrayal of the values of the collective unconscious psyche. They are apparently innocent, yet have a curiously compelling and familiar spirituality. Beneath the many cultural differences which provide the superficial detail of these stories, there lies a bare simplicity of plot and character, for these are portrayals of man's inner psychic experiences, the bare bones of subjective life. This kind of paradox seems to be an obvious facet of life, and it is acceptable when found in myth or fairy tale, and also acceptable in other kinds of symbolism, such as many religious themes. However, this quality of duality does not seem to have permeated our modern astrological viewpoint. There are still bad planets, which are wholly bad, and good planets, which are wholly good. And even if we allow a little ambiguity to enter, a little grayness among the stark black and white, it is still only a little. There remains a certain flat, two-dimensional quality to many of our traditional interpretations of the birth horoscope. Most maligned of all astrological symbols is Saturn, whose face as the beast is well recognized, but whose alternate face as the handsome prince is not often considered. However, without both of these, the symbol cannot communicate its meaning, and the interpretation has only a flat and two-dimensional value for the individual. Saturn is not merely a representative of pain, restriction, and discipline. He is also a symbol of the psychic process, natural to all human beings, by which an individual may utilize the experiences of pain, restriction, and discipline as a means for greater consciousness and fulfillment. Psychology has demonstrated that there is within the individual psyche a motive or impulsion toward wholeness and completeness. The state of wholeness is symbolized by what is called the archetype of the self. This symbol does not suggest perfection, where only the good aspects of human nature are incorporated, but instead implies completeness, where every human quality has its place and is contained in a harmonious way within the whole. This archetype stands behind much of the symbolism of the various world religions, and may also be found in folklore and in fairy tale, in every civilization and in every era of history. It is intrinsically always the same, although its outer ornamentation changes as we develop. The psychic process which Saturn symbolizes seems to have something to do with the realization of this inner experience of psychic completeness within the individual. Saturn is connected with the educational value of pain and with the difference between external values, those which we acquire from others, and internal values, those which we have worked to discover within ourselves. Saturn's role as the beast is a necessary aspect of his meaning. For as the fairy tale tells us, it is only when the beast is loved for his own sake that he can be freed from the spell and can become the prince. In traditional astrology, Saturn is known as a malefic planet. Even his virtues are rather dreary: self-control, tact, thrift, caution. And his vices are particularly unpleasant because they operate through the emotion we call fear. He has none of the glamour associated with the outer planets, and none of the humanness of the personal planets. In popular concept, he is devoid of any sense of humor. He is usually considered to be the bringer of limitation, frustration, hard work, and self-denial. And even his bright side is usually associated with wisdom and self-discipline of the man who keeps his nose to the grindstone and does not commit the atrocity of laughing at life. By his sign and house position, Saturn denotes those areas of life in which the individual is likely to feel thwarted in self-expression, where he is most likely to be frustrated or meet with difficulty. In many instances, Saturn seems to correspond with painful circumstances which appear not to be connected with any weakness or flaw on the part of the person, but which merely happen, thereby earning the planet the title Lord of Karma. This rather depressive evaluation remains attached to Saturn despite a most ancient and persistent of teachings which tells us that he is the dweller at the threshold, the keeper of the keys to the gate, and that it is through him alone that we may achieve eventual freedom through self-understanding. The frustrating experiences which are connected with Saturn are obviously necessary, as they are educational in a practical as well as a psychological sense. Whether we use psychological or esoteric terminology, the basic fact remains the same. Human beings do not earn free will except through self-discovery. And they do not attempt self-discovery until things become so painful that they have no other choice. Although few astrologers would consider Saturn a very cheerful bedfellow, the necessity of Saturnian experience is grudgingly recognized. That there can be joy in this kind of experience is usually not so easily recognized. Anyone who enjoys pain is considered to be a masochist. However, it is not enjoyment of pain which Saturn fosters, but rather the exhilaration of psychological freedom. This is not often recognized because not many people have experienced it. Everyone has at some time experienced the repeated delays, disappointments, and fears which usually coincide with a strong Saturnian influence. However, there is not much response to the question of what these experiences mean and how they can be used as opportunities, other than the usual advice of patience and self-control. The ordinary answer to this question, when it is not the wholly useless reply of chance, is the equally useless idea that because these experiences represent karma, the present completion of an action or cycle begun in some past incarnation, he had best endure his disappointments, grit his teeth, do nothing, have faith, and in this way pay off debts and find the path into the light. Even those astrological consultants who allow for some freedom on the part of the developing human being find it difficult to offer any advice for Saturn other than patience, calmness, and a positive attitude. Perhaps what is really asked of us by Saturn and by our psyche is that, like Parsifal, when he finds himself in the enchanted castle and sees the Holy Grail, we try asking why. It is possible that each delay, disappointment, or fear may be utilized as a means for greater insight into the mysterious mechanisms of the psyche, and that through these experiences we may gradually learn to perceive the meaning of our own lives. In regard to synastry, having made a closer observation of Saturn on the individual birth chart, it should be fairly apparent that Saturn is not to be pressed aside lightly when the comparison of two charts is considered. All things binding and permanent come under his domain, and any relationship without a Saturnian influence has little possibility of either withstanding time and change or affecting change in the individuals involved. What we tend to forget about relationships is that we do not generally form them for the purpose of being happy. We form them to complete something incomplete, and they are therefore a process of growth rather than an end in themselves. In this is implicit the idea that no relationship which does stimulate growth can exist without some pain and limitation, although we tend, through ignorance of ourselves, to exaggerate the pain and minimize the growth. There is ordinarily so much unconscious projection occurring in most relationships, and so little objective perception of the real nature of the individual opposite us, that any effort to bring the relationship out of the unconscious level and into a conscious act of union inevitably brings pain with it, the pain of confronting oneself. It is this process of mutual growth through the gradual unfolding of self-knowledge that brings the field of human relationships under Saturn's influence, although no one would consider him a planet that has anything to do with love. There is no fast and easy method of making a friend of Saturn. In many ways, the ancient art of alchemy was dedicated to this end, for the base material of alchemy, in which lay the possibility of gold, was called Saturn, and this base material, as well as having a concrete existence, was also considered to be the alchemist himself. Modern psychology, which is paralleling more and more the path of the alchemists, also seeks to make a friend of Saturn, although here he is called by other names. But if one is persistent, it is possible to extract the gold, and in the end one may find, if the effort is made, that Saturn has a sense of humor after all, when we have become subtle enough to understand his irony.